campaign on? Law and order. Okay? He said that he would, by God, if he was elected president, he'd get this country under control from a law and order point of view. So he really hammered on that. That's the thing he really hammered on, was law and order. He came out against civil rights, basically, without question. So now we'll go to Vietnam. What do you think his philosophy is Vietnam? What are your possibilities in Vietnam? If Michael Sanchez is going to run for president, what are the options you have in Vietnam if you take that job?
End it, or
how?
By withdrawing troops.
Okay, you can either quit, or you can
Try to get a peace.
negotiate, or you can do what? Win at all costs. So the options you have in Vietnam, seriously, are to quit, withdraw, just quit, or you can negotiate a peace settlement and take your lumps and get what Walter Cronkite called a stalemate, or you can say, we're winning this war at all costs. Okay? What do you think Wallace's philosophy was? We're going to win this war at all costs. He said this, we would try to end the war by negotiation, but if negotiations failed, a military victory would be necessary. So that was Wallace on the 3 campaign issues, okay? Let's move on to Nixon and tell you what Nixon thought. What did he do with civil rights? What did he do when he was vice president concerning civil rights? What did he and Eisenhower do on civil rights? Or ignored it. Didn't say much, right? And Nixon did the same thing here. He didn't say anything for it or against it. He didn't say what he'd do for it, right? He just kind of let it go. He didn't really spend a lot of time on civil rights, okay? What he did, and he could afford to do this, the first thing he did, he just stressed around the country the need for new leadership. We need a change. This country's gone to hell in a handbasket from 1960 to 1968. We need a change. I'm your man for a change. And I promise I will restore law and order in this country. So he hammered as well at not only needing a change for the country, but that he was going to restore law and order. That was his #1 priority also. The country was out of control, and if you elect Richard M. Nixon, I'll get this country back in control. Civil rights, basically ignored. What about Vietnam? What did he say he'd do in Vietnam? No, he took the political route there. He said, quote, I will bring an honorable end to the Vietnam War. That's what he told everybody. But he never really told them how he was going to do that. Now, why wouldn't he do that? Why wouldn't a candidate... Wallace has made it clear, we'll try to negotiate, but if we can't negotiate, we're going to kick ass, right? Why would Nixon just say, I'll bring an honorable end to the war? Why would he give any secrets out there? Because what's going on right now? Remember Johnson started. What did he start? He halted the bombing during his speech, and he started peace negotiations. And Nixon felt that if he went out and told what his strategy was, it would complicate those peace negotiations that were going on. Because you think those people that are negotiating peace in Vietnam want Wallace elected now? He publicly stated that we would win the war if we had to. Okay, so he basically stated that he would bring an honorable end to the war. He didn't state specifically how he would do it because he didn't want to upset the delicate peace talks. Who's got the bad end of the stick in this thing? Humphrey. What can Humphrey campaign on? Seriously. Because what are they going to point to voters? His record as vice president. And what's gone? How poor a job he's done in civil rights. How poor a job he's done in law and disorder. And how poor a job he's done in Vietnam. 60% of Americans think he and the president are screwing up the war in Vietnam. He doesn't have much of a chance. So he campaigns, but he's in a very difficult position. And he really can't say much because all of the perceived problems we have in America are because of him. Okay? Does that make sense? So he goes out and talks, but what are people thinking? Well, he's full of crap. I mean, he's been there for 4 years and they've screwed the entire country. You know what I mean? Actually, he's been there longer than that because he was there during the time that Johnson carried out Kennedy's term. So he's been there several years and screwed it up. So Humphrey doesn't have much of a view on anything. Let's talk about the results. Okay? Who wins this election? Okay, 73 million people went to the polls. Quite a few. Good turnout. 73 million. Anybody remember how many went in 60 with Kennedy fought Nixon? 69 million. Pretty close. 69 million voted in 1960. Highest amount of people have voted up to that point. This surpasses that at 73 million people vote in the election of 1968. Why are they voting? Because they're mad about Vietnam, they're mad about civil rights, and they're mad about law and disorder in this country. Okay? Now, popular vote, Nixon defeated Humphrey in the popular vote, surprisingly, by only 510,000 votes. That's not very many when you're talking about, it's 0.0069 is what it is. 0.0069. That is what Humphrey lost to Nixon by. It's just that many. So Nixon had 510,000 more popular votes than Humphrey. That's a really small margin, right? Which is surprising because he was the incumbent, so to speak. So we all know that popular votes in $1 will buy you a pop, okay? Nixon won 302 electoral votes, which was more than enough to win the presidency. Even though it was close in the popular vote, he had 302 electorals. Humphrey had 191. Wallace. This is unusual when a third-party candidate comes in. He's usually no good name. How many ever heard of Ross Perot? Yeah, who'd Ross Perot? He ran with Clinton and Bush, remember? Matter of fact, Ross Perot cost George H. Bush re-election because he ran during the Clinton, George H. Bush, George W. Bush's father. He got in there. Did he win any electoral votes? He didn't win a one, but what did he do? What did the people do that really didn't want to vote for Bush? Did they vote for Clinton or did they vote for Perot? Perot. And Perot really was the man that cost George H. Bush a second term. And he didn't get any electoral votes. Wallace got 45 electoral votes in this election. That told you that there were some people in this country that were racist, right, for one, and that were all for kicking ass in Vietnam, right? So he did get 45 electoral votes. That was incredible. Now, with the result of this election of 1968, Richard Nixon becomes the nation's 37th president of the United States. What's the president really hope for in an election like this, besides his victory? What else does he hope for? I sure hope if Mrs. Bilodeau doesn't come back after her pregnancy, I can get a counselor that kind of shares my same views. Because, not a good vice president. What do you want? What do you got? Who's the president? That's right, the Congress. So Nixon faces some difficulties because both houses of Congress, both the Senate and the House, are ruled majority by Democrats. So you'll have a Republican president and a Democratic-controlled Congress in both the House and the Senate. So Nixon is going to have a little bit of trouble early in his administration because he's going to be fighting the opposite party. But that's the election of 1968. Okay? What we're going to talk about Monday is President Nixon's plan for Vietnam and a terrible decision he makes. He advances American troops into Cambodia, which is another country, and it cost us a ton. Okay, we'll get into that. Okay, we'll end there today. The only other thing I want to ask is, anybody else got their parental consent forms for the trip? Okay, I'm going to let Zach, if he doesn't mind, talk with you guys, take pictures, whatever he wants, for his article. So if you want to ask the kids some questions, you want to tell them some stories about your experiences in high school, you could do that. We're glad to have you, though.
Glad to be here.